Is it time for the Sun Devils to finally move on from Bobby Hurley?
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcasts. Stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back in. We are continuing our conversation about Sun Devils basketball after the conclusion of the season on Wednesday night. The Sun Devils went 14-18 in the most recent season from Bobby Hurley and the Arizona State Sun Devils. They started off the year 4-0 in conference play, only to go 4-13 the remainder of the way. And now Arizona State is at a crossroads, and they need to have an incredibly difficult conversation of, is it time to move on from Bobby Hurley? Here's my standing on it, and I'm going to go through both sides on this edition. We're going to talk about why he should go, why he should stay, and a potential other outcome that may be lying out here for Hurley that we'll talk about towards the end of the podcast. But where I stand is I still don't know where I truly am, because I do think it's probably time. I think that 9 years and 2 appearances in the bracket itself and 1 appearance in the first of 4. So 3 appearances in the tournament in 9 years. 2 of them you've only ever made to the actual bracket, and you never won a game in March Madness. That's alarming for me. And I've said this many a times. You're a Power 5 program. You are one of the biggest, biggest colleges in the country. You should be able to go dancing in March more often than not. I understand you're not going to go every year, but it needs to be more often than 3 times in 9 years. That's just unacceptable. Like, yes, you're not a basketball school. Totally understand. We never pretended to be. Before Bobby Hurley got here, we weren't a basketball school. We're not a basketball school after Bobby Hurley leaves, whenever that is, if it's tomorrow or if it's in 5 years. We're not a basketball school. That's fine. We still should be able to have way more success than what we're having. And it consistently feels like we are settling for mediocrity. And this is across all sports for ASU. This has been one of the worst academic years I can remember for Sun Devil sports. Like, the football team was really bad. The basketball team was bad. Women's basketball was bad. The baseball and softball teams are off to poor starts. Like, there has been a lot of underwhelming play from the athletics entirely. And basketball was no different. The problem is, this has been the story of the basketball team for several years now. And ASU has had 3 losing seasons in their last 4. And ASU has gone to, to March Madness the only time that they had a winning record. And that was last year, which yesterday on the podcast, we discussed about how that was capturing lightning in a bottle. If you didn't check out that pod, check out that pod and see what I had to say about the season as a whole. But you just are not getting enough out of Bobby Hurley right now. And everybody is bringing up the previous coach, Herm Sendek, in the argument right now as to whether or not it's time to move on. Sendek, through his 9 seasons, went 159 wins to 137 losses, Hurley through 9 seasons is 155 wins and 131 losses. So nearly identical. And in that time, Herb, I don't know what I'm thinking, was able to make quite a bit more noise in tournaments than Hurley was. He was able to advance to the round of 32 in the 2008-2009 season. He made it to the NCAA tournament in 2013-2014, and they made it to the NIT 4 different times. They had way more success in postseason play than ASU has sniffed under Bobby Hurley. And they both lasted 9 years. And I mean, we're still waiting. Hurley hasn't been fired yet. I don't know if he will be fired with everything that's going on with the athletic department. It's a whole other conversation. But the comparisons are there, and they're shockingly similar to take a look at where Hurley is compared to where Sendek was through his 9 years. So it is a very real conversation and a very real parallel to take a look at here and go, hey, well, what are we going to do? What do we do? Because Hurley has truly not been that much of a difference and an upgrade from the time that you hired him. That is alarming. And one of the more frustrating aspects is Hurley's been able to recruit, and he's brought in a ton of really good players. Josh Christopher, the highest rated recruit in the history of the program, came in 2020. You had Lugens Dortz came in, Enoch Bache, Marcus Bagley, Tayshawn Sherry. I mean, I'm looking at all these recruits that are coming in terms of just the highest rated, and it's ASU, or it's not ASU. It's Bobby Hurley is bringing these guys in, and you've got 2 more guys on deck that are going to be some of the highest recruited players with Amir Ali and Sammy Yane that are coming into this upcoming recruiting class. Like, he brings in talent, and they can't do anything with it. And it's mind-blowing to me that you just cannot find a way to get these players in a position to win more games. And it truly does come down to coaching at that point, which brings up the conversation of, is it time to move on, or does he deserve another year? Because he is able to get the talent here. It's just a matter of if he can actually get them to that next step. And what's frustrating is we've seen it. We've seen Bobby Hurley be able to use the talent that is on his roster and turn it into competitive teams. I mean, the 2022-23 season, we saw a bunch of transfers come in, and it was one of the strongest teams that Hurley's ever had, with the Cambridge brothers, with Warren Washington, with Frankie Collins. We've seen him have successful teams. He had Remy Martin and Kamani Lawrence together, and they built quite a little bit of a reputation there. There have been good teams in the Bobby Hurley era, but more often than not, that's not the case. And this past season was his worst season since his first year in 2015-2016. He went 8-11 in conference play. His first year, he went 5-13. He finished 11th place in both seasons. In his first year, he went 15-17. This year, he went 14-18. So in terms of wins and losses, this was tied for his worst season with the 2021-22 season, where he went 14-17. This is his worst placing since his first year at ASU. And it's got to be one of the most frustrating seasons that we've had to sit and watch. It was not fun at times. I mean, there were times where I wouldn't blame anyone if they didn't want to watch a single second of the game. It's just not been a good product, which really brings up the bulk of this conversation. And that's whether or not it's time to move on from Bobby Hurley. I know that the fans are beginning to create an outcry, and we're going to take a look at that in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Did you know that even if you have a 401k retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal information. Claim as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Want to talk to you about our friends over at Amazon Fire as well. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as Fire Stick TV that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free and live television. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament that's right around the corner, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive in to all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the sports world, March Madness, NBA, Major League Baseball, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Mark your calendar for the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown Show on Monday, March 18th at 7 a.m. Eastern. Experts Andy Patton and Isaac Shade will break down their brackets and discuss everything you need to know about filling out a winning bracket and prepare for this year's NCAA Tournament. Find the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown on Monday, March 18th on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, wherever you're getting your podcasts. Back into our conversation now. There is still plenty that we need to talk about. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day, as always. Let's go ahead and flip the script and take a look at whether or not it's time to move on from Bobby Hurley. I could lay out a very good argument that it is. And I know that there's a lot of other people that are also going to tell you, yeah, it's time to move on. So let's lay out the argument. First of all, you gave Herb Sendek, his previous term lasted 9 years. He had just over a 500 record overall, sub 500 in the Pac-12 conference. Camden, nobody has lost sleep over it. I almost said Herm Edwards. Bobby Hurley, just over a 500 record overall, sub 500 in the Pac-12 through 9 seasons. Each of them have had meddling success when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Of course, Sendek actually has a win in the tournament. Hurley is 0 for 2 in the actual bracket itself, not including the first 4. Sendek did make it to the NIT several times. Bobby is not. This is so strikingly similar when you compare the two. And that's such a red flag. And 9 years isn't nothing either. That is more than enough time to give to anyone, college, professional, or otherwise, any sport, 9 years is more than a sample. That is, it's not even a gold standard. Typically, when you talk about evaluating coaches, you talk about a 3-year time period, and you look at how they coach through 3 seasons, and you evaluate from there. And I mean, if we look at Bobby through 3 seasons, his first 2 years were rough, as well. It would be for anyone. And then his third year, he goes 20-12 overall, 8-10 in the conference, tied for 8th, gets to the first 4. Doesn't get to the tournament, but he's right there. So, okay, maybe he's starting to turn that corner. And then he has a 23-11 season and a 20-11 season. So back-to-back really, really, really good seasons. Then COVID hits, and since then, he's got 3 winning seasons in 4 years. And I understand how much that has shaken things up. And that very well could have thrown ASU off their groove because they had 3 consecutive 20-win seasons. They were absolutely going to the tournament in 2019-2020 prior to COVID. And ever since then, things have been shaken up. Makes a lot of sense to me. Totally get it. However, COVID happened to everyone. Didn't specifically happen to Arizona State. It was not localized to Tempe, Arizona. Everyone else has been able to move on. So why is ASU still treading through the mud? We can't use that as a crutch or as an excuse for anyone. We didn't use it for Herm Edwards. We're not going to use it for Bobby Hurley. I understand where you can make those kind of convictions and those kind of arguments. Totally do. But it's been 4 years. It has been 4 years. You have 3 losing seasons. You've met in the tournament once. You did not win in the tournament itself. That's not good enough. It just flat out isn't. There needs to be a lot of changes in order to start getting that ball rolling and start having more sustained success. We've seen the glimpses of it, but we haven't been able to get the most out of it. Then you have to take a look at the fact that Arizona State is so far behind the 8 ball when it comes to the NIL. And we're about to feel that wrath again in this offseason. I have a really bad feeling we're about to lose a lot of kids. And we're about to really just get our you-know-what's handed to us. I don't want to assume. I just can't help but feel it's going to happen. And that's shame on me for sure. But this happened last year. And that was coming off of a tournament team where you lost a lot of kids. You lost 4 of your 5 starters. You lost several bench guys as well. Now you're coming off a year where you were absolutely atrocious for all accounts and purposes. You were 11th in your conference. There's going to be a lot of movement. There's going to be a lot of movement. At this point, you're hoping that you can retain Frankie Collins, probably Adam Miller, Sean Phillips, some role players, and then hold on to your freshmen in Braylon Green and Akil Watson, and your incoming recruiting class. That's your goal right now, is to retain those pieces. And I don't know if they're going to stay. And if that's the case, then it becomes even more difficult to want to hang on to Bobby Hurley, because the pieces he's using to build up this program could very well be gone. You're in a very tight spot right now. You're in a very tough situation with this Bobby Hurley saga. There's no easy answer to it. It feels very cut and dry to be able to say, yeah, they should fire him, they should move on. And quite frankly, maybe that is it. It should be as simple as that sometimes. Is Bobby Hurley has had X amount of losing seasons. Bobby Hurley finished in X place of the conference. Time to move on. Totally get that. Also consider you're going to a new conference. You're moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, and it might be in your best interest to have a clean slate. Straight up, that might be what ASU needs. Going to a new conference and turning the pages of the previous regime with Ray Anderson and Bobby Hurley and everyone else that was involved with the basketball program, and just moving forward. Clean slate, blank sheet of paper. Let's see what happens next. To me, that's probably your best argument if you want to fire him, is it's time to just do something different. That I can totally get on board with. That I can totally understand. But there's a lot of moving parts here, and there's a lot of what's the word I'm trying to find? There's a lot of doors that get opened here if you do decide to fire Hurley. And some of these doors are going to present major problems for you. Some of which you're not going to have the answers for immediately, and it could take you some time down the road, which, could lead you to want to hold on to Hurley at least a little bit longer. I'm going to lay out an argument for why he should stay here in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Got to talk to you about our friends over at Nissan. Now, this week's March Madness highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of our all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. The Tennessee Vols can only be described as a pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have had really created a good lane for themselves as claiming the top spot in the SEC. Player of the Year candidate Dalton Knecht has carried the Vols all season and made them a team to watch in March. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. One more time, wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's round out the conversation. Why Hurley should stay, why he deserves one more year. I think it's really because this is supposed to be a very promising class that's incoming. You've got 5 kids as of now, 2 of which are 4-stars. Those 2 kids are both in the state of Arizona. Those 2 kids are Valley kids for Activate the Valley. They are top 6 recruits in the state. They've got some size that's coming in too. So Amir Ali and Sammy Yinde, who are coming in as the top recruits, are both 6'8". Jeremiah Nyararko, who is coming in from Texas, 6'9". Jaden Smith is a center coming in for you at 6'11". The smallest guy is Bo Aldridge at 6'4". You have been killed with a lack of size these last couple of years. It would be amazing to get these guys in. And the reason why I bring them up as to why Hurley should stay is because if Hurley is fired, you might lose all 5. Because they're coming here under the umbrella of Bobby Hurley being their head coach. It was just like when Herm Edwards was fired for Arizona State Sun Devils football. Is pretty much everyone decommitted except CJ Fight. He decided to stay. And you can't blame those guys because this is who they are under the assumption is going to be coaching them is Bobby Hurley. If you go to a job and you're under the impression that the person who you talk to in the interview is going to be your boss, and then that boss gets fired, you have every reason to not want to go to that job anymore because the promise of what was going to be there is not there. So your coach isn't going to be there. You might not want to stay. So you lose those 5 guys. You'd lose 5 incredibly talented players, 5 guys that have size for you, 5 guys that are ranked very high nationally. That would suck. You also were talking about what's left on the roster might leave as well. You lose Bobby Hurley, maybe Akil Watson, and Braylon, and oh my God, Braylon Green. No, it'll come to me. Anyways, you lose your younger guys. You lose some of your veterans. Jemiah Neal, Frankie Collins decide to call it quits on the program. You start snowballing people that just leave the program. And sure, you hire somebody from another program and he pulls in his players too. Could totally happen. But it's just really tough for a program that is already at the bottom to dig even further down. That's tough. It would be a really hard sell. I mean, you're talking about a team that was lucky to win 14 games this year. Do you even win 10 if you lose the entire roster and more? That's a tough sell. That's a really tough sell. You also have to consider the fact that ASU is not a basketball school. Because of that, two things. One, do you settle for what you have? You have decent teams every handful of years with Bobby Hurley. You've seen some great. You had 3 consecutive 20-win seasons. That's enough to hang on to a guy for. Totally. Are you ever going to get back to that point? That's what you have to wonder. But you do kind of sit here and understand that this is a guy who can win enough games here at Arizona State. This is a guy who can recruit the program. He can make it fun. All that good stuff. We all love watching Bobby on the sidelines. Come on. Who doesn't like seeing a Jersey guy get red in the face from screaming and hollering? He is fun to watch. He truly is. He is good enough for this program in this argument. And the second thing is you're not a basketball program. So who are you going to get? Who are you going to be able to sell Arizona State to get them to come down to Tempe and either leave a program that they're at right now that they might be having success in, or just get some up and coming guy to want to take a chance at a school that really does not care about basketball? That's where it's tough. Trying to get people interested and invested. And I think there is some interest here. I do think that you have seen fans and students rally with the basketball team, but it doesn't feel consistent enough. It doesn't feel, and it's not even totally the fans' fault when you've got a product that's not living up to any expectations you might have. You play bad, people aren't going to want to watch. And there's another problem. Has the message gone stale? Is it time to bring a new voice in? Is it time to just start over? And it could be. I could see it either way. I think I lean more towards it's time to move on. The reason I hold back is because I'm not ready to watch an entirely new roster come through, especially while we're doing it with football. It would just be so tough for the state of Arizona State athletics to just fall so far behind everyone else. But sometimes you got to blow it all up. But the one final aspect here, and I mentioned this at the top of the podcast, and I wanted to bring this up towards the end, is that Bobby Hurley could choose to leave Arizona State. He did not sign his contract extension last year. So based off of that, I'm going to read you exactly what's here on AZ Central. The terms of the unsigned contract extension were approved by the Arizona Board of Regents in April 2023 and included up to a $2 million buyout should Hurley leave ASU early for a coaching job with another school. But absent a signed extension, Hurley could leave ASU this summer and owe the university nothing. His signed contract expires on June 30th. They might not even have to fire him. They might not even get the chance to fire him. because Hurley could leave. And that's a whole other can of worms, is what do you do then? Because I promise you, if he leaves, everyone else is leaving. If he gets fired, maybe some guys stay and they want to see what's next. But if he leaves, they're leaving too. There's so many different scenarios that can come about with what happens next with Bobby Hurley. So yeah, you can fire him. You're going to be starting all over, and you're going to have some really crappy basketball to watch. If you thought this was bad, it's going to get worse before it gets better. You can hold on to Bobby Hurley, settle for mediocrity, go to the tournament every 3 or 4 years. That's good enough for you, sure. You can potentially sit on your thumbs and watch Hurley decide to leave on his own. Then what do you do? What's going to happen to your recruiting class? By June 30th? Man, there's that, because that's when his contract expires. He could just leave. What are you going to do? That's so late in your recruiting cycle. I'm not sure when signing day is for basketball, but they could still opt to get out of their signing the same way that Arizona kids were able to get out of it when who was their head coach? Jed Fish left, or Washington when Kalen DeBoer left. Like, these kids could still find a way to get out of their signing with Arizona State. We are in such a rock and hard place situation right now. And I don't think there's an easy answer. I know it's really carefree to say fire Bobby Hurley, but that opens a lot of doors and a lot of questions that need answering. And I don't know how you can answer these questions right now. This feels like a 3-year project at best if you fire Hurley. If you retain Hurley, I mean, you hope you can get back to those 20-win seasons, but you've had a lot less success over the last 4 years than you've had success. Where do you lie on that? Where do you decide it's good enough? That's my biggest question. I want to know what you guys think, though. Are you pro fire Bobby Hurley? Do you think he should stay? Who's going to replace him? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at Richie Brads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you get your podcast, though, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. And, of course, a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. There's going to be a long offseason in front of us for Sun Devils basketball. I'll be keeping you up to date as best as I possibly can. Over the weekend, we are going to have another episode that will make up for Wednesday's absence when we take a look at the Sun Devils Pro Day that was on Wednesday. We're going to take a look at how guys did. We're going to take a look at any other information that we can scrounge upon for the future of the team in regards to the 2024 NFL Draft. We've got spring ball right around the corner here. In about 2 weeks, we are finally going to have some fresh football stuff to talk about. So now's never been a better time. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, follow along. I'll keep you updated, and I'll see you next time. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.